And with that said, so we're recording now our March 2021 webinar. Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you, if that's okay, to kind of set us up for discussion.
Sure. So we were, Gabby, Ryan, Alex, and I were talking last week, thinking about what we want to discuss today. And we came up, I think your notes, Ryan, had like 10 questions. We probably won't be able to explore that, thinking about how robust and sort of rich our discussions usually are each month together. So we'll get through some, and we'll see how things go and whether we want to, move into breakouts to have deeper discussions around sort of specific topics. But in preparation for today's call, I went back a year on my calendar and realized that today was the day I was on a family trip, and we were flying back the next day, so Wednesday of a year ago, and it was about 24 hours into me paying a lot more attention around what was happening in the United States, and like getting on Amazon and trying to buy things, and everything was already sold out. So like, this week was the week of a lot of us closing, or really saying, we'll see how the weekend goes. Maybe we will or won't be together on Monday. So really just wanting to recognize this moment together. And I know that we have the trial for Derek Chauvin happening here in Minneapolis as well. So like we're holding a lot of tension in our city, but I think a lot of us are holding this as we come around the 1 year mark, and we just wanted to recognize that together. And so we were thinking about, we've talked about this a couple different times, but thinking about just starting off with, where are folks now? Where are your institutions now? Like, are you closed? Are you thinking about opening? Have you reopened and shifting back and forth? Feel free to like put that in the chat, or to come off mute and just say what's happening at your sites, and in your teams and in yourself, and sort of like how you're thinking about whether COVES data is being collected or not, or how we're thinking about data. I'm willing to share where you are. Yeah, Holly, go ahead.
So I'm Holly Menninger. I'm at the Bell Museum, which is Minnesota State Natural History Museum. We are reopening for a second time on Friday, so March 12th, which will almost be exactly a year to the day that like we closed the first time. So we had been open July through mid-November. And then we shut down again, and then made a decision to reopen. Now we would have been able to be open according to governor's rules and stuff for a little while, but realized there was some value to our staff into sort of taking that time and not jumping on the reopening train too quickly. So we reopen Friday, and we'll be open 3 days a week: Friday, Saturday, Sunday. At reduced capacity, I should say. There are still all those rules.
In San Jose, California, at the Children's Discovery Museum, we are also opening for the second time. We opened this last Friday to the public. We had 2 member weekends prior to that, but we're opening our outdoor space. And we're planning on opening our indoor space on April 2nd. And those are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I should add, with 2 play sessions a day.
I'm Betsy at the Putnam Museum and Science Center in Davenport, Iowa, and we were closed from March through mid-July last year, the latest in our area to reopen. We have been open since then, but with significantly reduced capacity and 5 days a week instead of 7, and a couple of our science galleries only being open. Some of them not open at all, and some of them open a couple days a week with extra staff there to kind of ensure proper distancing and that type of thing.
Thanks for those sharing in the chat around hopefully reopening in April. Reopening for the second time. Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
Which is yay. But we have been open haven't shut down since our initial reopening. This week is the week that our mask mandate has been removed, and Space Center Houston is using the fact that we go onto federal property as a good way to kind of message about maintaining our mask requirement. We've only had to kick out 2 people this week, so that's great. Yeah, we're just keeping on trucking, and it's spring break week, so we're kind of anticipating a lot more people. So it'll be interesting.
I don't think we have other sites from Texas on the call right now, right? I don't think so. Just thinking about, yeah, how do you handle the changes in our guidelines, as we've talked about in different ways in this group over time, more state by state, but now within state.
You have one, Sarah.
Yeah, I think
another
Rebecca
Texas
is
site.
here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, yeah.
We're from Texas. We're in Waco. We're part of a university campus at Baylor University. We're the Mayborn Museum. So we, luckily the university made that decision for us. And so they're keeping their mask mandate. So we're able to continue ours, but it is spring break, and we're ordered a lot of signage and are putting we had signage we're adding to and putting posters on the front doors. So it is very noticeable. You know for sure that we are requiring masks whenever you get here, and we're just kind of prepping and then seeing how that goes. But we have had some angry customers, and we've also extended the Texas mask mandate was 10 and up, and the university preferred that we do the CDC's recommendation, which was 2 and up with masks. And so we've had some upset parents about that, and we're just, working through it.
And I see Shani's note in the chat as well that the Exploratorium is hopeful to reopen in July, which is good news. I was actually under the impression you guys were targeting March, so but I understand things continue to change. So I like your comment also, Leanne. Stay strong, Lauren, but stay strong, everybody. That's a good note. That's all right. Just say that to everybody.
But yes, stay strong, everyone.
Yeah.
We are all still in the middle of this.
Yep, and the Bradbury also staying closed because not a strong recommendation, I see.
I think related to one of the questions that we were wondering around about related to the mask mandate is sort of as more folks get vaccinated in each of our cities or states, how are we balancing that? And I'm wondering if any of you all at your sites, at your museums, have guidelines already that you have in place or that you're thinking about or evolving as in terms of individuals who are vaccinated, continue to mask, or shifting volunteer programming or attendance numbers. How is it influencing you at all?
We're talking about it, but I mean, I think ultimately the CDC guidelines in terms of going out into public spaces suggest that everyone should continue to wear masks and social distance, and so we're operating in that way, but keeping our ears to the ground and continuing to talk about it in our cross-functional team meetings as we kind of hear and see. It's hard to know because we're not there yet, but I think the bigger concern for us is trying to understand where museum workers fit within all of the different vaccination tiers and levels. And we've got some guidance now from the state of Minnesota regarding youth program workers and sort of direct contacts, which have implications for our summer camp staff. But that's also weighing heavily because a lot of, at least in Minnesota, it wasn't really clear where museum workers fall in that space, particularly frontline staff and educators.
Yeah. Cheryl, go ahead.
Yeah. So we're basically a children's museum, and that said, our audience, we're going to be the last to be vaccinated. So we will continue to enforce the mask wearing, and I think we will ask even our staff to do that. Our staff has been able to start the vaccination process here because we in the state size are deemed as educators. So for the most of us have had at least the first round. I get my second one this week. So even though our staff is vaccinated, we still, need to set the example for our visitors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Santa Clara County is going to be one of the last ones to give up the mask mandate.
Mm.
Yeah, the main way we're planning regarding the vaccines is that we think we might end up with a little bit more of those conversations with our visitors, if and when we're able to reopen, of people saying, well, I have the vaccine, I shouldn't have to wear a mask. So we are anticipating that possibly having extra challenges, so are doing some additional, just strategizing and training with staff regarding that. But yes, for San Diego, we've been able to have people who are working in person with children and the public have been able to get vaccinated or start the vaccination process. Our staff who are working remotely are not.
Thanks for all of this. So connected, oh, Ryan.
I was going to say, I posted a URL in the chat, which is a PDF to research out of Technical University in Berlin, but it ranks aerosols, essentially public spaces with theorized laboratory tested settings for spread, and museums, similar to everything everyone just said. Museums with occupancy limits and masks are deemed one of the safest public spaces for people to go right now. They rank it at a 30% occupancy level and 40%, and it's two of the top three. You can see a whole bunch of other interesting information in a relatively short, I consider it user-friendly article, but I've been sharing this more broadly because I think it's good advocacy for us. And it's also that we are not virtue signaling or doing hygiene theater. We are actually creating safe spaces, but we need to adhere to those things. So regardless of your operational status, take a look at that and see if it's helpful.
Fantastic, thank you. So that sort of connected to where I was headed, sort of connecting these continued shifting sands that we're in, societally to data. I'm wondering about, Lauren, you said that you all are collecting data. Congrats. I know that that was a discussion for a bit. And for others who are collecting data or who are starting to think about either adding it to the staff practices that are happening as you all reopen, or if you're moving towards reopening, what kind of use are you seeing for the COVES data in terms of having these conversations, or what are you noticing in the data as all of us continue experiencing these changes and our collective misunderstanding around public health communications and what vaccine does or doesn't do? Maybe I'll prompt it. I know something came up in some data at the Museum of Science. So Ryan and Alex.
Yes, we have. This is not a shameless plug for COVES. It is just data in action at our museum using COVES, but we've been collecting since we reopened first in July, and then we closed again in early December, reopened in early February. And we've been monitoring a lot of the COVES data points, specifically the ones around health and safety. So perceptions of the museum visit specific to COVID times, and have noticed a big change from our fall data to our spring data. Now, February is a little complicated because that also coincided with our Massachusetts and New Hampshire school vacation weeks. So even though we had occupancy limits and even though everyone was required to wear masks, we had more people than we've had since we reopened. In the span of about 9 days, I think we sold out 8 of them as far as our time tickets. Great for business, but we definitely saw dips in our data. So specifically ratings for outstanding on the OER scale, and looking at ratings. I'll let Alex jump in a second here, but basically this is the beginning of a conversation now that we've got 1 month of data from our reopening that we're bringing to all of our executives. We're talking about what this means for our forecasting and attendance, and the visitor experience as far as the health and safety. And I'd be happy to share that data after tomorrow once I kind of share it again and get the okay, but it's fascinating stuff. And I think, Alex, do you want to add a little bit about the coding?
I can add a little bit. I mean, basically the reason why we flagged it was it's like some of the data points are things that we're tracking very regularly for our museum's like accountability system. Looking at who said that, you know, if they had concerns, that those concerns were addressed, health and safety, COVID related concerns, overall experience rating, and a couple other things. And just like across the board, pretty what I was perceiving as relatively large, kind of dramatic dips. Like our overall experience rating, the outstanding percentage was like in the high 40s, mid 40s, and it was then dropped to like 26% or something like that. So maybe a word of caution for those of you who don't have a February vacation week, but instead are approaching your March spring break and think, you know, there might be some selling out. I think crowding is really, really hard to manage, because even if you're, you know, well below your capacity or at your capacity and everything is, you know, above board there, people crowd and enter exhibits in different, you know, ways. They might all be in the one part of the exhibit while that other exhibit over there is totally empty. And so it's just really challenging. And I would say, other than crowding, another thing that surprised me in our data was that the in the overall experience rating, anyway, I looked at the open-ended follow-up to that. And other than just like there were too many people there, I was surprised at how many people were there. We have a lot of exhibits that are closed right now, some just because they're under construction, and some because of like, I don't know, they were closed for social distancing reasons, or like the cafeteria is closed right now. And a bunch of other things you need a ticket to get into, like you need to control occupancy in the space. And there's just a lot of disappointment around stuff being closed and not being able to get a ticket to the new exhibit that they really wanted to see. And so just the kind of thing that would be disappointing anytime, not even during a pandemic. So it's something we're monitoring, and definitely seems to be a school vacation week crowding affected thing.
Other pieces that have shown up in folks' data, I know that I believe that some sites who are on the call are tracking, you know, kind of weekly or pretty regularly. Any other things that you're noticing, or shifts in the conversation that are happening internally at your sites based on what you're hearing from visitors?
I think we'll have some comparative data the next time we meet, but since we just reopened, we'll be looking at that data, and so we'll make a point to look at that so we can report to this group, you know, if there's a contrast between what we saw in October through early December when we were open and now. So
that'd be great.
I'm really interested in that Boston data, because what I would say, we've been reopened now for 2 weeks, is how similar it feels to the fall for us. We're still operating at 25% capacity, but much closer to being sold out during each period. So again, I'll keep on watching, and it might be fun to do a deep dive with you, Brian and Alex. You know, the themes that I was seeing in the fall are continuing of, you know, anytime someone sees a mask out of place, it feels like I get a complaint on that. We get a complaint on that. And I assume that some of you are seeing that as well. Mask enforcement is remaining really important. We're starting to have conversations about how much people are appreciating the greater quiet and the lower capacity. And obviously we don't actually want to run the museum in the long term with a 25% capacity limit, but can we play it up as a special opportunity now for people And then I am curious whether others are seeing this, but I'm seeing continued issues around food. Obviously, we're offering far, far lower food service. You know, you can't eat in the museum, and up on the 6th floor of the there's basically everything got shut down except you can buy coffee in one place. And sort of seeing how much people considered food to be part of their museum experience. We're grappling with it mostly by just putting up a ton of signs explaining why you can't eat as many places and as frequently, but it still really seems to bother people a great deal. So it sounds like Boston is seeing that too, and maybe others as well. And if anybody has a magic wand that they were able to solve it without a sign every 2 feet, I'd love to hear about that.
Marjorie, thinking about the structure, the infrastructure of the Science Museum of Minnesota, are you all planning to create spaces to eat in the outdoor areas or, you know, on the patios, or is that?
I actually don't know. I think that's a great question. We did take one of our cafes and not only take the cafe out, but put exhibits in there. So, yeah.
I think what's also tough with the Museum of Science, and maybe other museums fall into this category too with food, is that it's not easy to get food anywhere else around the museum. It is a trek to get to the mall or to, you know, get to some other places that are kind of like hidden. And so without having food at the museum, you really, like, you have to have brought your own and eat in your car or something like that.
We definitely hear. Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, we definitely hear, we've been open since July, but our theater and our concessions have remained closed. And we definitely are getting customer feedback about the lack of food. And our theater may open maybe late May, and we're still not sure if we're going to open concessions then or not. And that would probably be a time when we'll really hear about it, because people feel they can't go to a movie without popcorn or whatever it is that they want. Typically, that's where most of our concessions sales come from. So that may prove an issue for us as we go forward.
Can I ask a general question about water fountains? Are you all still shrouding all your water fountains? How are you helping people who come to your place who just desperately need to have a drink of water?
We sell water in the gift shop, but our water fountains are closed.
Are water fountains closed, Ryan and Alex? I don't remember.
I was literally going to ask you because I feel like you're on site more than
I feel like there's one that's a push pedal, and I think that might be open, but
and one is bottle
am not
activated.
sure.
Our water bottle filler is available, but the put your mouth on it part, I know you're not supposed to put your mouth on it, but you know, is taped off.
Same with us. The one that you can fill your water bottles from is open, and there is one outside, but we also have a supply of small water bottles. You know, it's single serving that we keep in case there is somebody that really has a meltdown, especially, you know, again, because we deal with young children.
Yeah, that's my concern. It's for the young children. We have the opportunity to replace our fountains with bottle fillers. We didn't have a bottle filler before. Bottle filler sounds great, except what do you do with the visitors who don't come with a bottle? And what do you do for all the kids who are coming in? I don't want to, you know, get rid of the amenity of being able to get a sip of water through a fountain.
We do provide a plastic cup.
Do you think we'll be reopening our fountains?
Not anytime soon.
Yeah.
And I think in our literature it spells that out. So say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we recommend people bring water bottles.
Yeah, we have all that information in a couple places on our website, and when you purchase the tickets, you We tell people to bring their water bottles for our hydration filling station, and there's no, for the outside area, we say light snacks, but no meals. But as we go into the inside, there's going to be a different message of, no eating inside whatsoever, and you can have your snacks outside. So lots of, continue to be lots of rules still.
Yeah, the other thing we did is we took out the lockers. So we used to have lockers you could rent to store your whatever you brought with you. Those are gone.
Lockers went after 9/11. Lockers haven't been around for a long time from places I've been affiliated with.
Holly, did you have something?
Oh no, I was just saying that we use like the compostable cups at our water bottle filling station. The other thing that we did, we never had a restaurant on site, but our gift shop had food and beverages and a coffee machine. We've actually, we're reconfiguring our shop and coming like out because it was constrained in there anyway, for visitors to go around. And so we've spilled out our shop into the visitor lounge. We're no longer selling food and beverages in the shop. We make it pretty plain and all, like when you reserve your ticket, that there is none. And then like we're just taking over the other spaces. So there are no tables and chairs for people to sit and eat, at least inside the building, and that we're encouraging them to use the outside spaces if they need that.
Another thought around the food and impact on kind of people's stay and visit. I'm not sure where we have this data from because we don't have it from COVES yet, but supposedly our dwell time used to be about 4 hours and it's dropped to 2. So there's a lot, I'm sure, that's going into that, but I'm curious like what feature like food and eating goes into that. I'm sure it helps extend the stay a little bit, but just something I'm curious if you guys have kind of that background data that you can do some comparisons with. That'd be interesting.
We do, and I was looking around the friendly faces on this call. So as we all know, the COVES survey calculates stay time by asking about when people arrived at the museum and then doing the math. So anybody who's doing the on-site methodology right now will have those data, including places like St. Louis Science Center. And actually, I know, Kate, you're hidden on this call, Kate Mitter, but our art museums who are piloting are also doing on-site intercepts. And so they've got robust data. It's limited because we can't do pre-post pandemic style comparisons as well, but COVES definitely has some data points that could speak to if that's changing and how much. We did an actual dwell time study when we first reopened in August, trying to get visitor data points to see if that was changing. And I actually don't remember off the top of my head. Leanne, did we notice a drop in dwell time, overall stay time from pre to post? Terrible way of phrasing a global pandemic.
Not sure either. Try to look it up though.
Yeah. So there are data. I'll get back to you, Lauren.
So thinking about this before times, current times, someday after times of coronavirus, I'm wondering if you all any of your museums are at a place where you're thinking about things that you've learned over the last year, things that have shifted and have kind of like raised questions or assumptions that you may have had about what goes into a museum visit. I think this conversation around food and water is a really interesting one, in terms of like, okay, that was critically important. You know, were there pieces that came under conversation or scrutiny in different ways like that?
I have a really easy one, and I know that this has been echoed in some other external studies as well, but just the importance of individual hygiene. The Museum of Science was notorious for having lots of hand sanitizer stations in the past. They were always empty. And like people would comment on that, but no one really cared. And now it's this huge focus, right? We're like constantly monitoring how full are all the hand sanitizer stations. And they're everywhere, and that's great. People can always see them. And the minute they're low or close to empty, we get called on it. So I think attention to personal hygiene, even if it's just hand sanitizer stations and not water and soap, is going to be really critical for both staff and visitors, and making sure people know where they can wash their hands or do whatever is going to be important.
I know this is kind of question, like our data is different, but we've had issues with lines in the past, a lot of them, and COVES, or not COVES, COVID, COVID forced us to really get more intentional about like including a start time to our tram tours, and not just having people stand in line and fill in for hours and hours. So I think that's a great kind of operational thing that really needed to happen, and this really forced the issue for keeping people safe, making sure that the trams weren't totally loaded up and creating big masses of people standing places, but just a nice little silver lining.
Other reflections or points of learning that have occurred within your institutions?
Well, I think from a marketing perspective, one of the positive byproducts of is that we collect email addresses for everybody who comes to the museum now, where that was a little challenging at the admissions desk to make that happen for when there were lines and when there was crowds of people, and trying to operationalize that on a consistent way was challenging. So now we get email addresses for everyone because they have to purchase their tickets in advance. So as this rolls along, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see, how long we keep the advance ticket requirement, and then once if we ease up on that, then what happens to the consumer? Will they go back to purchasing their tickets at the museum, or will there be at least a percentage? Will we get a jump that stays permanent of that increase of online ticket purchases?
Mm-hmm. So the other question that Alex prompted in our little calendar invitation was, are you thinking about instrument changes for data collection? If so, what changes are you considering? And I'm wondering if anybody has been thinking about that, or has been in conversation via email with Ryan and Alex that you'd be willing to share with all of us.
And I'll I'll speak from both perspectives. I'm very curious about everyone's ideas on this, because I think it's a great opportunity for our questions and measures team to think really critically about the changes we made right around this time last year or going into the summer, and the changes that we should soon make to continue to be responsive to the times, but understanding it's a different time right now. And so I'm really curious what your ideas are. And then speaking more personally from the museum side, Alex, Leanne, Liz, and I just met, and we're presenting to two of our internal senior stakeholders about changes to our instrument and our institution specific questions, making sure that we keep the survey short enough, manageable for our respondents, that we're not overburdening them. I feel like we added a lot at the beginning of the pandemic to try and figure out what was going on. And also making sure that we're asking the right questions for where we are right now. So we've been thinking a lot about it. I don't have good examples to share that are full COVES related, but it's very top of mind for me and us.
Are you thinking of removing some of the COVID related questions?
We would have to we would want consensus from COVES members who are collecting data. We'd want to reflect on how accurately it is measuring what we want to measure right now, and an easy one that comes. So the COVID-19 segment, if you can recall, asks two questions about health and safety at the museum, right? And one, how worried are you? Two, to what extent did we address those concerns? And then an open-ended follow-up. depending on responses. That has given a rich source of data, I think, to a lot of people. We've relied on those questions a lot. To a lesser extent, there's a question that says, how comfortable did you personally feel touching the exhibits at the museum? And this one is complicated because we've already talked a little bit about the cleaning, right? I think Gretchen even commented on the, comments on pre-cleaning, or noticing people cleaning now, and or our attention to some of the science, which talks more about airflow, people in a space, aerosol spread, rather than surface contamination. So it's definitely tricky. And this one hasn't proved to be as actionable, at least at our site. So I would love to raise that question. Are we using this? If so, how? If not, let's get rid of it. Let's put something else on. What are people thinking about? So that's one of the changes I think I will bring up soon.
Gretchen, did you have something? Are you good?
Yeah, one of the changes that we've been affecting is that as we shift our gaze towards how we understand digital engagement and how that drives attendance and to what particular things, we've started to think about how we use the why did you come and what did you do options, and being a little bit more. So it's not necessarily changing the structure of the instrument. It's just maybe how we think about what we put on there. So trying to match those why did you come and then what did you end up doing questions.
How well my mic is doing. We took off the touching question because we're outdoors right now, and then when we open up indoors, like our children's area that's a play space, that's not open. So the only thing we really have are some digital interactives, and I think 1,000 styluses. So everybody's going to get a stylus when they enter, and we have no clue if they're going to be used or if they're useful, or if people are just going to touch the screens anyways because there's hand sanitizer. So that's something we're really curious about. I mean, importantly, because it costs money, but just seeing if there is a change or how quickly people are going back. But the questions about concerns and comfort, and whether we address, I think those are the two questions that are of highest interest to our exec staff.
Did we make changes to ask any questions regarding the stylus on your instrument for reopening?
Because we're now reopening. We're reopening on Thursday. Surprise. So, but that's just outdoor. So that won't be relevant till we reopen our indoors, which we're hoping is early April. Say our frontline staff and our museum educators have been approved by the LA County to get the vaccine under that. And then that came out, so we might have attitudes changing.
Beth, your mic keeps going in and out. So we're getting like every 5 words and then 5 more words later. But it's great. I'm glad to hear people are getting vaccinated.
We're getting vaccines.
Yay!
So, I mean, that's a huge barrier. Sorry, my computer likes to, choose its own adventure. So that's something exciting. I think that's going to be game changing, but we also have on our website very specifically, we will not ask guests about vaccines. So that'll be an interesting wrinkle as that unfolds.
So just by way of introductions, we've already heard from Lauren at Space Center Houston, who is one of our newest data collection sites. Betsy Matt Turner at the Putnam, also one of our newest data collection sites. But I don't want to skip over Caitlin, Tracy Miller, who's here from the Cincinnati Art Museum, our third pilot site technically for our art museum expansion. And Caitlin and her staff did some training not too long ago with plans get COVES up and running, albeit in pilot fashion as we continue to work on things. But Caitlin, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a chance to speak so you could talk about what COVES might look like or is planned for at the near future at the CAM.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you so much. At the CAM, we're really excited about diving into the COVES world. We've kind of wondered for a long time how our Net Promoter Score and OER ratings and other visitor experience numbers line up with our friends. And so it's really kind of exciting to have this opportunity to share data and learn from one another. And I have found that during the pandemic, relationships with other museums have just been so important, and being able to learn how everyone's doing the different safety protocols and kind of gave us confidence. And we took a pretty aggressive approach to safety in relation to the official rules that were going around. And I think our visitors actually really appreciated that. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about feeling like a safer place to be. And so I'm excited about Ryan's article. I'm going to have to pass that along to our team and show that we're doing good stuff with that. But yeah, but we're starting prototyping soon. I've been going back and forth with Ryan and Alex and my team on getting our prototyping tool ready. And then we're looking forward to participating in the art museum convening here in April, and then hopefully being full on COVES after that. So that's where we're at.
But relevant to this, relevant to the whole conversation, isn't your plan right now to start data collection outdoors in your little exit atrium, and weather permitting, but using the on-site intercepts?
Yeah, so we're planning to do on-site intercepts, but out on our front plaza, which I think will work really well because the way flow is at our building, most people will go through that space, and so on their way out. So that's our plan. And then we're not going to bring in-person intercepts back inside for a little while. We're not doing any indoor programming or surveys or anything like that. But we also, during this pandemic time, opened something called Art Climb. It sounds a little bit similar to what Crystal Bridges has going on, but it's outdoor sculpture and kind of spaces to gather and look at art. And so there's just more people outside now. So it's kind of an exciting time to be doing research as well. So we're going to be doing some observations on Art Climb and also doing the COVES tool on the plaza. Yeah. And it's already starting to get warm here. Like I have my window cracked. It's so nice. So.
Fantastic.
I heard there was a heat wave in Minnesota.
Yep, we're in 50 degrees. It's a whole new world here. Yeah. Ryan and Alex, do you all want to talk a bit about the art convening since we referenced it? And I'm not sure I don't remember if we've shared it with this group.
I would be flabbergasted if we hadn't shared that we are 1 month away from the beginning of our COVES art virtual convenings. So this is part of our IMLS grant to expand into art museums purposefully to make sure that COVES as a model of collecting shared visitor experience data is capturing the essence of the art museum visit. Basically that our assumptions about experiences and what needs to be measured are true or consistent across organization type. As part of that, we were originally hoping to actually go to Minnesota to the Minneapolis Institute of Art and meet for about 2 days to discuss all this, but now we've moved to a virtual convening, and we're inviting 23 art museums, two people from each organization, to come and participate in discussion to both figure out some of the ins and outs of the system, basically how to integrate with COVES as we know it, do some deep dives into the instrumentation, i.e. are the experience ratings the right one? From just the early piloting, it doesn't feel like educational and entertainment are the right types of ratings questions. So how does that modify for the art museum experience? And then thinking about basically how we establish or expand this community of practice to make sure that it's fully inclusive of art museums and that we can grow together as we think about everything Caitlin just said, right? The importance of having museum network connections, being able to share some data, talk about what it means, but with other art museums included. And so we've got a lot of exciting work coming up. We'll be meeting each Wednesday in the month of April, and I'm super excited about it. And just as the statement of the obvious, or at least it's obvious when I think about what COVES really draws its strength from, we are going to have more institutions with more data than ever before. Once COVES art is successfully off the ground. So all of our ability to have these conversations and interpret the data is going to grow just from the fact that we're expanding into art museums. So it should be exciting for us all, I should say.
Yeah, and I'm sure that we will find moments to sort of share back on from those conversations either in our April meeting or in May. And I think maybe I'll just say this out loud to help the planning team remind ourselves, but a month from now, we'll still be in a whole new space. And the Minnesota hit 10% fully vaccinated in our population yesterday, I think. And so thinking about how quickly vaccines are getting out there and being distributed, 30 days will make a significant difference. And so it'll be interesting to think about and return to these questions around, if you're collecting data, what are you seeing? What are the new kinds of pain points you're having with visitors or patrons, and how are the conversations changing internally? So we're excited to continue sort of capturing this as it happens, for us to think about what a difference a year makes for us and within our data. And one thought, I'm looking at this last question, Ryan, that you wrote down in our planning conversation. We started thinking about whether some kind of quick image, but just like a snapshot of our year in time across COVES might be interesting and might be useful, either just as sort of historical record or for helping us continue having conversations with each other and with our colleagues. So thinking about looking at the last year or so and somehow trying to capture the arc of what's happening within our institutions in relation to the various pandemics we're experiencing, what we're starting to see in the aggregate data sort of across all of us who are able to collect over time. And any questions or assumptions that sort of helps us re-raise or think about. Would something like that, and Ryan and Alex, you can pipe in with more information if I didn't capture that correctly, but would something like that, thinking about 1 to 4 pages, right, not a lot, be useful or informative for you or your teams? I saw thumbs up, I saw some nodding. Some maybe it's more like maybe. I don't know what you're talking about yet. Yeah, great. So I think we've had a number of points where we've asked you all what's happening in your institutions, what's going on, what data are you collecting, and I think a lot of us have collected information in sort of different avenues, and so we might come back to you and see if there's more information we could sort of feed into this big picture, thinking about us as being a snapshot of some portion of the field of at least science centers, children's museums, natural history museums. So just thinking about that as something to capture and sort of record how have we met this moment and shifted pretty regularly. All right. Great, so Ryan or Alex will do that. Thank you. I'll just abdicate myself from that work. Just kidding. But yeah, we'll think on that and come back to you all with questions. Other final questions, comments, notes?
I think it would be interesting to add to that, maybe just some questions or hypotheses about what some of the permanent changes might be. Mm-hmm. So looking at your analysis a bit like, will motivations change? And one thing we don't necessarily get at is just what people want from their museums and cultural institutions. Just, that can kind of get out with motivations changing, like why are they coming here now? That's clearly been a shift. And so I'm just curious, looking forward, maybe some things to look out for and what we think might stick. Who knows if there's really going to be a return to normal.
Kind of expanding on that, that kind of I'm curious if we have any sort of hunches, I won't say necessarily data, but hunches about how the changes that we're implementing now, if that has adjusted how accessible we are to communities that we've been really working hard to bring in through our doors better, and if that's created any new barriers or limitations that we need to kind of keep in mind as we unadjust to COVID, hopefully. So just a thought.
Right, or vice versa, as Gretchen said, yeah, in the chat, of how has this opened us up or closed us down based on forms of access. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Any final thoughts or questions, Ryan, Alex, from the team? 3 minutes.
I think we have our title of our data summary, A Year in COVID Coves. Thank you, Megan, even though you're off the call already. No, this was great. But if you didn't get the chance to speak up or for any reason have additional thoughts after this call, definitely let us know, specifically about all of those things that we talked about, how you're using data or how you want to be using data in the near future. If you're not reopened yet, but you know you're going to be, there's a bunch of us on this call and in the community who have been able to use COVES data to leverage different talking points across the organization. That's been really helpful. So reach out about that or think about how you want to use the data. Tell us how you're using the data. We're always looking for new sources of inspiration. And also think about, which is a continuation of what Beth just said and how Lauren summarized it, but like, where are we going next? Are there changes to the instrument? Are there different ideas we have about measuring the visitor experience? Because we use this phrase too much, but it is an inflection point. One way or another, like times are changing. And we made the argument last year around this time that, the data collected this year was going to be weird no matter what. You're going to put a lot of asterisks in any report you do if it's with your own data. And moving ahead, the same is true. We're going to like pivot to what is the new normal? What do our visitors want from us? Our motivation's changing, all this kind of stuff. So we can really be thoughtful about creative ideas from the questions we ask our visitors. And it's a good time to think about it now.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for joining the call today and sharing where you all are at this moment in time. And I wish you a good month. We'll see you in 4 weeks or so.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.